Ross.
Hey everyone, it's Graham here. I'm the founder of TellPeople. I help lawyers talk about their ideas in language that makes sense to everyone. Thanks again to the folks at Ross Intelligence for inviting me to contribute this guest video blog. So today is part 3 in the 3-part series we've been doing on how to introduce a new idea to your organization. It could be a tech idea to a law firm, could be any idea to any organization. Back in part 1, we talked about how to think about the audience for your idea. In part 2, we talked about how to get that audience to listen. And today in part 3, we're talking about how to help that audience understand. So, if you want someone to understand your new idea, it helps to have some sense of the difference between what's going on in your brain when you talk about the idea and what's going on in the brain of the people who are listening to you. When you're talking about your new idea, your brain is seeing everything you know, think, and feel about that idea, right? You're seeing all of the work that you've done, all the effort, you're remembering all the conversations you've had, all the ideas that you've thought about and maybe didn't include in the final presentation. All of this stuff is alive in your mind, right? And so too is everything that you felt along the way, right? Maybe it's been stressful, you had a lot of anxiety, maybe you're pretty excited to be finally sharing your work, right? As far as your brain's concerned, you are watching yourself on HD TV. Of course, the person you're talking to, right, they can't see any of that, right? All they get are the words that come out of your mouth. If you're watching yourself talk about the idea on HD TV, the person listening to you is essentially sitting in the next room, listening to you talk on a tin can phone. By the way, if you've ever wondered how a person can give a really boring presentation and seemingly be unaware that the audience is really, really bored, this is the reason. So, what do we do about this? So the way to get somebody to understand what you're talking about is to bring them into the experience. And the tool we use for this is very simple. It's called I Wish You Were Here, right? I wish you were here so you could see what I see, know what I know, and feel what I feel. Let me give you an example of what I mean. And we're going to continue with the same example we used in part 1 and part 2, which is my own experience trying to introduce the idea of a shared calendar function at this small law firm where I worked. So in part 1, we talked about the audience for this idea, which were the firm's senior partners, a couple of older guys. And in part 2, we talked about how to get these people to listen to me, how to set them up to hear the idea, and I explained how I introduced the idea by telling them I had an idea for improving billing efficiency and also client service. So now that we're in the meeting, and I've sort of pitched them or introduced the idea to them, I had to make it real for them. I had to sort of give them a very detailed account of what it was like for me without the shared calendar function. And I did it very simply. I said, guys, I spoke to your secretaries, and I know that over the course of this week, you've had about 60 calls with clients. And to set up those calls, you all send about 1 email, just to your secretary or to me. But the assistants and myself send between 2 and 6 emails per call, trying to organize everybody's schedule. That means we spend every week about 100 to 200 emails just setting up conversations with clients, which is about 1 to 2 hours a day of time that nobody can bill for. So imagine what it would be like for you if you spent an hour just today sending emails to set up calls. So the idea that I have is a shared calendar function which is not going to cost us anything, and it's going to allow us to take what is now 1 to 2 hours a day down to 15 or 20 minutes. So that means I'm going to be able to work the same number of hours every day at the office, but bill 1 to 2 more hours of time. And that's, X thousand dollars in revenue a year. And similarly, your assistants are going to be freed up 1 to 2 hours a day to do maybe higher value client relations work for you. So that was the idea. That's how I pitched the idea to them. And notice that I was able to make it very, very specific and easy for them to understand. Imagine if you spent 1 hour today just coordinating client calls. Right? Everybody in the meeting can understand how bad that is, how inefficient that is, and I'm happy to say everybody in the meeting approved my idea. Great success. So, to recap today, if you want someone to understand what you're talking about, your new idea, you need to help them see what you see by putting them inside the experience with you. And that's the end of our series. Remember back in part 1, we talked about how to think about the audience for your new idea. In part 2, we talked about how to get that audience to listen. And today in part 3, we talked about how to help that audience understand. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks again to the folks at Ross Intelligence. If anybody has any questions, please do reach out. I'm Chris Graham at TellPeople, www.tellpeople.ca. Thanks so much.
Ross.